Hello, friends on YouTube. This is actually office hours, but I am going to start by answering a bunch of questions that I got on a tweet yesterday. And I am just gonna, let me share my screen here really quick so y'all can see what I'm looking at. Yeah, so this is office hours. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Office hours is just a time where people can ask me questions, and I will share a link to the Zoom. Oh, I just realized I have a regular Zoom that I invite people to join, but I didn't use that one this time. So I'll provide a different Zoom link to folks in the Discord here a little bit later. But to get us started, I'm going to answer a bunch of questions that I got on this tweet here. It looks like I got 49 responses, tons and tons of questions in here. So I'm going to just answer questions and kind of give a lay of the land of my thought process around deciding which of these databases to use. So let me just share this on here. So we get those questions. And normally I totally ignore the YouTube comments, but you know what? I'm going to bring this over here and I'll keep an eye on the YouTube comments if you want to ask me like follow-up questions and stuff. But yeah, once I finish answering this, then I'm going to go to regular office hours. So you can feel free to stick around for that. And then you will need to ask questions in Discord because I will not answer questions in the YouTube chat. Okay, so with all that taken care of, let's talk about choosing a database. So first, it's good for you to know what I'm working on. So I have Kent CDODs. Oh, actually, there's the Heroku app version of this. I'm not going to be hosting on Heroku going forward, but that's where it is right now. But here's my website, and it is overdue for a refresh and everything. So my plan is to give it an overhaul. And right now it's not much, but it's all built on Remix, and I am going to have authentication. We're using magic links because there are lots of really great benefits. I did a 3 minutes with Kent episode a few weeks ago about why I like magic links from a user standpoint and a implementer standpoint. They are just really great. And so, yeah, we're going to have like user data on my website, which we don't currently have. There's going to be some pretty cool stuff with that. And so I have some needs for hosting stuff. And when I first started this, I just decided to go with Firebase. I've used Firebase for a lot of stuff before. Their authentication works, and currently this is working with Firebase authentication. Now, if you tried it right now, it might work. I'm kind of in limbo switching. So, I mean, feel free to give it a shot. I'm not sure it'll work though. But yeah, so it was working, and I was using Firestore, and things were going okay. But then I started to wonder about, okay, so where am I going to host this? And I think like the place I wanted to was fly.io because it was kind of like a better version of Heroku, or there's render.com, which is also kind of a better version of Heroku. And so either one of these seems like a pretty solid choice. But then there's also Cloudflare Workers, which is like compute on the edge. And so things are like lightning fast, and Remix will soon hopefully have the ability to deploy there without much trouble. People have already deployed to Cloudflare Workers with Remix. Yeah, and so like I've just been thinking, okay, well, if I'm doing Firebase and Firestore, I should probably just host on Firebase, and you can host Remix on Firebase. But I really like Netlify, and I've used Netlify. My current site uses Netlify to deploy this. So, and you can deploy Remix to Netlify. I've used Vercel in the past, and so like there's just so many different options. But one of the big requirements for me is that I need to have a good idea of, or I want to not only choose the thing that's best for what I'm building, but also choose the thing that I will be able to teach other people that will be like a good approach for whatever it is, or for most things. So I need to choose not only like the absolute best thing for what I'm doing, but also something that I can teach that is generally applicable to others. And so I need to make sure that what I'm talking or what I'm using is applicable to like 80% of people, would be a fine selection for them. And isn't too complicated for those other use cases. And so Cloudflare Workers is really cool and exciting, but it probably isn't the sort of thing that I can just say, all right, everybody, let's all jump on Cloudflare Workers. It probably, it has a more narrow use case. And so Cloudflare Workers is going to be out, which means, let's go back here, which means Cloudflare Workers and the key value store thing is not going to be great. The other thing that I kind of decided against the key value for my hosting is that then I'd have to implement my own version of authentication with that, which is basically like a Redis store. So like I probably would, but that was just one thing that was in my mind, like, oh, I don't want to do authentication myself. Foreshadowing. So I still wanted to do Firebase, but it came down to like, my website probably doesn't need it. My website would probably be fine just hosting everything with Firebase or having like authentication with Firebase. But one thing that I want to keep in mind is I would really like it if I could deploy my site so that it is in different regions around the world, so it applies or so it's really fast wherever you are in the world. And serverless is the, can kind of help with that because they can deploy that to multiple regions, which is kind of why like using Netlify or something works pretty well. But then you have to think about your database. And so even if your serverless goes to a region, if your database is hosted in one place, then that whatever region needs to go to where that database is. And so it's, you kind of lose on some of those benefits. Serverless is really nice. Yeah, like if you don't have this round trip to like go to my authentication server wherever it's located in a single region, or go to my database in that single region. So I really wanted to be able to have all of my data be regional as well. And there are ways to do this, and lots of these, as far as I know, the only one that supports this very well is Fly.io. I may be wrong. I'm probably wrong. I'm sure there are others that do a distributed Postgres hosting. But that brings us to FaunaDB. Well, actually, first off, Firestore isn't going to work because I believe they are not that way. And so depending, I'd have to choose the region that I want, and that's the region that my site is in forever. And so people on the other side of the world from that region, it's going to take longer for them. Now, like I said, again, it's probably not a huge deal with my site, but because I'm doing authentication and every page is going to have some of the user's information on there, that means every request is going to need to go get the user's information and resolve that cookie session token to the user object and stuff. So yeah, Firestore is kind of out for that reason. FaunaDB is built with this in mind. That's the whole model. And this is actually kind of what turned me on to this idea in general. Is like, man, so we could do compute on the edge with Cloudflare Workers, and then we can do data on the edge with the KV or with FaunaDB. And that's, wow, that would be awesome. So the thing that, as I was investigating yesterday, I tried out FaunaDB, went through a tutorial and stuff, but I'd already tried Prisma with Postgres. And I really liked that. The TypeScript typings were just phenomenal. I was really, really happy with this. I didn't have to do very much to make that work. And the tutorial that I followed was how to generate TypeScript typings from the FaunaDB GraphQL resolvers and stuff. And I actually never got it working, but I'm sure I just like missed something. But yeah, so that seemed like it would be an okay solution. But I don't know, like, so I've used GraphQL at PayPal. I used GraphQL and it was great. But my site absolutely doesn't have the problems that GraphQL solves. And remember, I'm thinking about, okay, so what am I going to learn that I'm going to teach other people? I'm going to be teaching people to build React apps with Remix. I think it's the best way to build a React app. Otherwise, I wouldn't be spending so much time learning it, and I wouldn't teach it to people. And so the thing is that Remix solves so many of the problems that people have that leads them to GraphQL, myself included. And so it's hard to justify the complexity, which GraphQL is a lot of complexity, the complexity necessary for using GraphQL. So that's kind of GraphQL is great. Don't get me wrong. And I don't think they invented problems to solve or anything. They are real problems. The fact is that when I'm using Remix, I don't have many of those problems. And so I don't feel like the complexity cost of GraphQL is worth the benefit when you're using Remix. And so, yeah, so I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to use GraphQL for this. And Fauna does have a regular CRUD operation stuff. They have a FaunaDB module, and you can do their FQL queries, but that was just weird. I struggle to understand that syntax and those APIs. So it's like, this is the definition of vendor lock-in. And so I don't want to do GraphQL because I don't think that it's worth the cost of the complexity, and I don't want to get vendor lock-in with FQL specific with FaunaDB. If I ever decided to switch to something else, I would be in trouble. So yeah, so FaunaDB is out for that reason, even though it's just so awesome that it's distributed and everything. So then we're back to Postgres. I'm actually pretty happy about this. I feel like there's not really much vendor lock-in when you're talking about Postgres, and I'm using Prisma as my ORM, and Prisma is awesome, just love it. So then it's like deciding, okay, so which one of these providers do I use? Render seems awesome. It seems like a really easy way to deploy sites. Their pricing is so sensible, and they have a great UI for managing their Postgres plugin and stuff like that. The only thing that's holding me back on Render is unless I missed something, there's no way to do a distributed deployment. So it's kind of like deploying on Firebase with Firestore. If I decide to go with the US West or something, then people on the other side of the world have to go around the whole world to get data for every request. And yeah, I can put Cloudflare in front of stuff, and I can maybe rework stuff so that the authentication information loads, asynchronously when the client renders or something. But then I'm not much better than just using Gatsby to server render stuff and then cache it. And I really want to be able to render the logged in state. I want to hydrate that logged in state. So server render the logged in state. So yeah, unless I missed something, I don't think that Render can deploy to multiple regions all at once. So and Supabase, I don't think they do hosting, but that's irrelevant. As long as I don't have to deploy my database and my my site to the same provider. I don't really care about that. That's fine if what really matters is that both are I'm able to do it regionally, so that the Asian region is able to talk to the Asian region of the for the database deploy. So that doesn't matter quite as much to me. So I was thinking Supabase for hosting the Postgres stuff, and they seemed pretty good. I don't have too much to complain about that. I'm not sure if they support multiple regions either, or distributed Postgres. So yeah, and I don't think that I need to look any further into it, because I think Fly is basically, well, Supabase isn't differentiated enough from Fly for me to choose that. So I'm going to talk about Fly in a second. Railway was another one that I looked into. I didn't look into it a whole lot, but I think that they are distributed. And so like I potentially could still look into Railway. I just had somebody recommend it. Yeah, so I think I'm going to be pretty happy with Fly, but I may still look into Railway. Okay, so that's everything that I was thinking about yesterday. I've used MongoDB in the past. I've used, we'll probably see it in here, various others. I just really want to use Postgres. I feel like it's the most generally applicable. I never loved Mongo. So it's hard to articulate why. So sorry, I'm not going to give you much more reason than that. Just never really liked it. Okay, so let's go and answer a couple of other questions. Yeah. Oh, and Netlify, I probably won't deploy with Netlify just because I am gonna, well, the fact is, yeah, with Fly, they can host my here, let's just go to fly.io. They can host my site, and they can manage the distributed Postgres as well, and then I can communicate between the two without too much trouble. I think Railway can do this too, so I may end up going with Railway, but I am absolutely going to choose one, and we'll go with that today. Okay, anyway, let's see. I think I've kind of answered some of these. Yeah, analysis paralysis, definitely what I'm feeling right now. Oh yeah, Hasura. So I have played around with Hasura before. It's very cool, but it comes with the same complexities of GraphQL. I just don't think that when you're using Remix, you have those complexities as much, or you have those problems necessary for the that necessitate adding the complexities. So yeah, and I just really like Prisma. I'm just very impressed with Prisma. Okay. Let me just see if there was anything else. Yeah, a lot of these suggestions are non-starters because I want it to be distributed, multi-regional. And yeah. Let me just see. Oh yeah, I've heard of Lightstream. Haven't, oh, actually I looked into Lightstream because they support SQLite. I don't really want to use SQLite. It has limited support for some of the features that I really like. So, oh yeah, planet scale data. I've never heard of this before, but so I might look into it. Just needs to support distributed deployments of the Postgres database because I want to do distribute. Well, what I could eventually do is I could just deploy on Cloudflare Workers, so I have compute at the edge, and then as long as I am able to distribute my Postgres all over the world, then that will work fine because a user in Asia will hit the Cloudflare worker that's closest to them, and then the Cloudflare worker will hit the database that's closer to it. And I think that would be pretty reasonable. I think that was pretty much all of the questions that most people had to ask. They sure asked a lot of questions. Yeah, we talked about Hasura. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that is my evaluation of things. Let me go ahead and I'll look at your questions that you posted in YouTube as well as Discord about this, and then we'll move into office hours. I'll invite people into the Zoom call, and we can just do our regular office hours. Technical issues. You don't hear anything in Zoom. Hold on. You can hear me, right?
It's like a guy.
Okay, good. Okay. That would have been just really sad if we couldn't if I had been talking this whole time and nobody could hear me. I wish I could say that's never happened before. Oh yeah, so Kim is suggesting, here, I'll just bring this over, suggesting using AWS Ara. I have never actually heard of this before. AWS just scares me, to be frank. I know that Prisma is working on, or potentially going to work on a connector for DynamoDB. And so like maybe I'll go with that in the future, but yeah, like I have deployed to AWS before. When I was at Alianza, we deployed to AWS S3 buckets. And even just the S3 stuff I found to be very confusing. So this is not my area of expertise by any stretch at all. And so the less confusing stuff I have to deal with, the better, which is why I'm using these other services. AWS has just been like, I mean, if you have to have a certification program for for people to use your thing, then maybe it's a little complicated. I don't know. Yeah, it's always just been difficult for me to use. And the same thing goes with Google Cloud. Anytime I have to do anything extra outside of like Firebase, I'm like, no, get me out of here. This is just not my area of expertise, and I don't want it to be. I just want to finish this and move on to the other stuff that I enjoy doing. Yeah, single instance. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think that nowadays distributed, so like I know that Fly does this. It is oh shoot, what's it called? Here, let me somebody shared a link to it directly just a little bit ago. I will find it. Stolen. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, so Fly.io uses Stolen. I think a lot of these distributed Postgres deployments do this. And apparently it works great. So yeah, and this is 5 years old. So yeah, maybe 5 years ago it was not as awesome. But yeah, I'm assuming that this works fine. And Fauna is built on this idea. Cloudflare Workers, the KV, key value store thing that they have, works on this idea where you have eventual consistency. And that most of the time works well. It certainly works for my use case where users don't actually, at least right now, they don't need instant access to one another's data, to the data that they write. There's no, so far, there's nothing that they really share with one another. So that eventual consistency works really well for me. And yeah, and I think for many use cases as well. And the eventual consistency we're talking about is like a minute, where it gets eventually consistent. So okay, yeah, I'll answer this question when I'm finished talking about the database stuff. Reconsider the distributed requirement. Yeah, so like, it's just that I feel like the future is distributed. So maybe, again, it's overkill for the requirements of my website. Probably, I mean, it's, you know, maybe 400 milliseconds for some regions in the world, but it's not overkill for the use cases of many of the people that I'm going to be teaching. And so I want to, and the cool thing is that I could just go with Postgres, Prisma, and Remix and deploy to a single place. It doesn't need to be distributed. And so if I teach people to use those tools, they can deploy to a single place and it's no big deal. But then if I've proven that this can also work in a distributed way, multiple regions around the world, then I have the best of both worlds. So you can, if you don't need the extra complexities of distributed, then that's fine. You just deploy it to a single place. But if you do need it, then you can deploy it distributed. And so yeah, I want something that can work for both, and I want to do the more complicated thing so that I can make sure that it does work. Not only that it does work, because I'm sure it does, there are businesses built on top of this, but that I know how to make it work so that when people ask me, I can answer. So yeah, that's the requirement isn't for my site. The requirement is for my learning and ability to teach. Okay. Yeah. That's good. Okay, sweet. Let me check out YouTube if there are any comments over here. Whoop. So does the regional pricing, oh, we're gonna get into all sorts of other questions. I can answer those here in just a second. Let me finish up the database stuff. Store user credentials to be compliant. Is Firestore? Yeah, so here's the thing. I'm gonna be using magic links. And I'm going to try and build this afternoon. So if you want to come, or maybe not this afternoon, just after office hours. So if you want to hang out for that, I'll probably do a different YouTube stream for that. Firestore is a great choice for an app, just not for what I'm trying to accomplish, as I explained earlier. Storing user credentials, I don't need to if I use magic links. I just store their email address. So that's nice. Hopefully I am connected to Zoom. Hold on a second. So yeah, we're gonna have like user data on my website. What is this? I don't currently have. There's gonna be okay, good. I was like, no. There we are. Okay, good. Peter, you're freaking me out. Okay, do you use Firestore even if there is no runtime requirement? Yeah, actually, right now, my website, there's no Firebase on the client. In fact, what I have so far doesn't need any JavaScript on the client either. And I do have mutations and stuff. It all uses forms because Remakes is awesome. But yeah, all of the Firebase stuff is 100% on the server. And so far I've moved all of the Firestore stuff to Postgres with Prisma. And so now I just have 3 methods that I need to move from Firebase auth to my own implementation of authentication with Prisma and Postgres. So that'll be cool. Do you use Firestore even if there's no real-time requirement? Yeah, so sorry, I think I read that question twice and misunderstood it the first time. But yeah, so Firestore isn't for real-time. You're talking about Firebase real-time database. Yeah, I wouldn't use that necessarily if you didn't have real-time. Just use Firestore. But yeah. M1 MacBook, nope. Is Remix ever going to be free? I don't know. I don't run that business. But I know that they want to. They just need to make it sustainable. So, what are your suggested ways to learn as part of a team? Okay, yeah, I'll answer that later. You compare the pricing fly. Yeah, so the pricing matters for sure, but it matters less to me than the capabilities. And so the one cool thing about Render is that the pricing is just very obvious. You know what you're getting, you know what you're paying for. With Fly, the pricing resembles that of lots of other pricing models where they're like tiny fractions of a penny for different resources and stuff. It is so confusing. I don't even know what this means. But because what I'm building is a part of my business, then I just say that's a business expense. Less for the government to tax me on, I guess. Yeah, that's the way it is. Okay. Yeah, best way to deploy a single Express and Postgres API with cheapest option. I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe Render. Fly, I think they have a free thing, but I think Render has I think their free is actually only for static sites. Yeah, if you want to do anything on the back end, you're in the $7 a month. There was one though that had a really great free tier, and now I've lost it. I think Railway actually maybe was it. I think they have a generous free tier. Whoops, free. Yeah, generous free plan. So yeah, that Railway might be good for running a server for free. Okay. I think I am done with the YouTube side, so I'm gonna close this. If you want to ask questions for office hours, and I'm done talking about databases, I think. Let me just double check this. Oh, that's what Peter was talking about. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, you're good. No worries. I made a mistake and connected to the wrong Zoom. I started a new Zoom for this. So yeah, let me grab that Zoom link for folks to join. We're moving into office hours now, so this is your time to ask me questions. You can join the Discord to ask questions here, or you can join the Zoom, which I am going to grab a link for. Where's that? There it is. I'm going to grab a link for that right now, and I will paste it to the office hours channel here. Okay, Sweet. So feel free to join and ask your questions, and I will do my best to answer. Hopefully I answered most people's questions about this. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to go with Fly. I may investigate Railway a little bit more, mostly because Fly is still kind of an early stage startup, and it as a result, lots of my interface to work with Fly and manage stuff is through the CLI. And when I'm working with stuff that I don't understand very well, CLI is not what I want to work with at all. I want a UI because feature discovery is very difficult with the CLI. So yeah, if I can, I'll look at Railway again and see whether they can do distributed, and if they have a nice UI. And if that's the case, then I may try Railway instead. But in any case, I'm going to make a decision today, so I can actually see if I can get that deployed and running today. That's my goal after I get authentication finished and implemented. So if you're interested in doing that, then stick around on my YouTube channel after office hours, because I will start up streaming the implementing authentication myself. Okay, great. So we've got some folks here in the Zoom. What questions do you have for me? How can I help you? Okay, feel free to interrupt me if you're in the Zoom, because you get priority, but I do have a couple of questions. I'm going to answer box runs really quick. Actually, I'll just move this over here. So whether my Remix blog is open source, it absolutely is. You can go to KCD Dodds, and then it's Remix KCD Dodds on GitHub, and it's all right here. So you won't be able to actually install anything unless you have a Remix token environment variable set, which means you will need a Remix license. Somebody else asked a question of whether Remix will ever be free. Oh yeah, I already answered that. I don't know. I know that they want to, but I don't know if they will be able to do that sustainably. So it just kind of depends on what they're able to do. Hopefully. Okay, we did that, and then we had here we go. Yeah, Salem, are you in the call? I just got your
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
How you
I'll
doing,
answer.
Kit?
Yeah, good. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Good to see you again.
So you've got an interview in 2 weeks. That's exciting.
Yes, it is. First technical interview.
Ooh, yeah, okay. So I have some good luck. It's exciting. You're gonna do great, I'm sure. I have some bad news. Every interview at every company I've had has been different. So there's unfortunately not a whole lot I can give you. I guess with the exception of PayPal and Facebook, those two were actually pretty similar. Very practical. In fact, what's funny is they're the most practical of any interview I've ever had. Everybody else was like, well, you know what? Alianza had a really nice practical interview too. But yeah, everybody else was just like, let's ask you some weird nebulous questions and see your algorithm knowledge and stuff. And I did still land a job at some of those, but yeah, most of those are just like, you're not cut out for this organization where we move boxes around on the screen. Like, okay, sure. So yeah, like, unfortunately, you have that going against you potentially if the company is bad at interviewing. Yeah, there's not a whole lot you can do there. But in general, I think like a really good piece of advice is do not be afraid to say you don't know. If the employer is put off by that, then maybe they're not the employer you want to work for anyway. So you want to work at an employer where you're comfortable saying that you don't know, or maybe you need some clarifying information about the question. So yeah, I think a lot of it has, or the most general and useful advice I can give you is being honest about your experience, your level of experience, and being personable. Yeah. Let's see what else. It's been a long time since I've interviewed. Actually, last interview I had was at PayPal, like it's 5.5 years ago.
Oh man, that's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, I know. I just didn't think about that until just now. So yeah,
The
I don't
good
know,
thing
but
is you don't need to interview anymore.
well,
You're KCD. You are
yeah.
KCD, you know?
Well, if I wanted to get a job at a company, I'm 100% certain they would interview me. Yeah, well, most unless I was like really good friends with the founders or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, like especially at bigger companies, like if I wanted to go back to PayPal, I would 100% have to interview. If I wanted to go work at Facebook, or which of course I don't, but if I did, then I would absolutely like, or Google, or like any of those big ones for sure, like Netflix and stuff. I would absolutely have to interview. So yeah, I don't know if I ever will, but yeah, I can't give you a ton of really useful interview advice. I can tell you how I interviewed. So if somebody wants to ask about my interviewing style, then feel free. But I can tell you that we have a just phenomenal group of people here who can help you in the career channel. So
Ah,
I would suggest that. And lots of these folks are interviewing actively and stuff. So they might have some good tips and advice to give you there.
okay. So really quick with the what I was told was that the interview is going to be like this. We'll do a data structures and algorithms on code signal. Okay. And
Mm,
then they have a technical interview with their lead developer where you're just talking about your experience. And they also have a React interview and a general culture fit interview.
mm.
So that's the layout.
Yeah, that sounds similar in layout to Facebook and PayPal. It was like an all-day thing. You had 4 or 5 different interviewers. Um, yeah, drink a lot of water for sure, and just make sure you're well rested the night before, because it is a slog for sure. Yeah, the data structures and algorithms, that one's tricky. Part of me wants to be snarky and say, so how many times have you used this algorithm during your time here at this company? The answer is 0. They've never used it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, you wouldn't want to be snarky in an interview. But at the same time, like maybe they do use it a lot. Like it's very possible. And is that the type of work that you want to get into? Maybe it is, and that'd be cool. But yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, definitely you want to drink a lot of water. And come like fed and everything, so that and take your bio break before the interview starts. Yeah, basically you want to eliminate any of the things that could cause distraction as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, hey, thank you for that.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you,
That's
man.
exciting. Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, I think we're actually out of questions so far. So I'm happy to take any other questions that folks have. And I'll just wait for a little bit for more questions to come in. And if you're on YouTube, you can totally join this. Go to the kcd.im/office hours page, and you can find a link to the Discord right here. Or you can just click on the office hours short URL, and that'll take you straight over there. Okay. Yeah, Next.js and its role in web dev. So I used Next.js like 4 years ago for the Glamorous website, and so it was a different thing then than it is now. Next.js is awesome. People love it. The thing that I because it's been such a long time since I've used it, I don't feel super qualified to talk about it a lot. So I just frame everything that I say around he doesn't know what he's talking about, I guess. But yeah, I think that from what I've heard from multiple different people is that Next.js is a challenge to deploy anywhere but Vercel. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. The cool thing about the Next.js and Vercel combo is that you can deploy to Vercel. You can deploy Next to Vercel very easily. They're just really they go really well together. And so there's fewer decisions you have to make, fewer things you need to worry about. And so that's nice. The problem is if Vercel doesn't work for you, then you're a little bit in a lurch, and it's a lot harder to get things working. Now, I know the Netlify folks have tried really hard to make deploying on Netlify really a great experience, but that's the thing, is that you again, this is just from what people have told me, but if you want to deploy anywhere else, you have to do a little extra work to make it work nicely. So that's, yeah. And then from people that I've talked with who have used Next.js and are switching to Remix, apparently there are a lot of really awesome things that Remix does that Next makes really difficult. I can't really articulate what those things are because I haven't experienced the pain myself, but I can just tell you the general feeling that Remix users have moving from Next to Remix is it's just they're able to do some things really nicely. Like I said, that's not really much of an answer, so sorry about that, but that's as much as I can give you. Okay, do I usually read specs like HTML and ECMAScript? I will read specs sometimes. So the way that I go about things is I try to find the highest level article that I can about something that I don't know anything about, and I'll read it and try to get everything that I can out of it. And if I didn't get what I needed, then I'll go a level deeper. If those articles don't exist, like it's a brand new feature or something, then I naturally automatically have to go a level deeper. And so, yeah, I definitely spend some time in specs, especially for accessibility. I find myself going into the specs for accessibility quite a lot. Because there's a lot of great material on accessibility, but not nearly, like, we don't have there's just unfortunately not enough content creators around accessibility. And so, yeah, if I need to learn something about accessibility, I'm often in the specs for ARIA and stuff. Yeah, HTML spec, I think I've read that a couple of times, but mostly when I'm doing some accessibility stuff. ECMAScript, especially when ES6 and recent like newer features were coming out actively, I spent a fair amount of time trying to understand those specs. I said that the way I said it intentionally, because they do have a special syntax that they use, and I still don't really understand how that syntax works. Apparently, it's very readable and understandable if you understand the syntax. It's just like learning what these different symbols mean is the challenge, and I never really did. Yes, and therefore I also find it very hard to digest. I think it's a matter of experience and familiarity. It's like a different language sometimes, but you can derive some interesting things out of the specs. So yeah.
Yeah, I find it hard to just jump in and just read it and understand it. That's why I asked, like, is it something that's like a shortcoming for me, or like, do I need to, like, am I
You're not alone. Yeah, you're definitely not alone. Yeah, it is a learned skill, being able to read specs for sure.
Also, not for JavaScript developers, it's for JavaScript language implementers in the browsers.
Yeah, exactly.
Different audience.
That said, I think I just made specs sound really scary. They're not so scary. Like you can derive some meaning out of them, and the more time you spend in the spec, the better. And in fact, I found that the ECMAScript spec is a little harder to understand than like HTML or accessibility, the like ARIA spec. So there's that. Yeah, I would definitely, like, if you can't find a good article about the feature that you're trying to learn about or something, then don't just give up. Go ahead and go to the spec and see what you can learn from there. Okay, so Salem's asking, what role does Node and Express play in a React development environment? And do I, as a React developer, need to learn these technologies? Yeah, so I think that as a JavaScript engineer at all, you cannot avoid Node. You're going to use Node for your build tooling and stuff like that. So understanding Node is definitely, like, once you npm install, you are using Node to do that. Like, you can't avoid it. So having a pretty good understanding of Node is definitely a useful skill. I don't think, well, first of all, you can't avoid it. Second of all, you can do cooler things with it if you understand it well, especially if you start using ScriptKit, which is awesome. I love ScriptKit for automating stuff. And yeah, and it's just a bunch of node scripts that you can run. It's so cool. It is so cool. And it's only getting cooler. So yeah, definitely take a look at ScriptKit if you want to automate stuff. And that's just, the more you understand Node, the cooler, better and more useful your scripts will be. So yeah, and Express, I wouldn't say that you have to understand Express, especially if the company that you're working at is like our backend engineers build my APIs and stuff like that. And maybe I'm doing SSR, but there's like limited node stuff I need to do. I'm just making requests back to that backend. Yeah, like you could totally do something like that with Remakes or Next, or even Gatsby, where there's no backend. You just you do that on the front end. And then of course create React app or fully client-side app. You do nothing with Node really in those, or nothing with the Node server in those situations. So I wouldn't say Express.js is 100% necessary. And even if you do a Node server, you may not be using Express. You may be using something else. But yeah, I found myself to be much more capable if I understand Express. I'm able to do a lot more interesting things, whether for side projects or otherwise. And then Node.js, yeah, absolutely, I think is a really useful skill, an enabling skill for React developers. All right, Omkar is asking about TypeScript beginners to use in React. So yeah, you know, the biggest resource I can give you is the TypeScript cheat sheet for React. It's phenomenal. It's very good. And I am planning on writing a blog post that is TypeScript needed for, or TypeScript you need to know for React. I have a blog post about that for JavaScript features. But I want to, once I finish going through all of the Epic React material and migrating it to TypeScript, then I'm going to just kind of take a little survey of all the features that I use and turn that into a blog post of all the TypeScript features that I use to build React apps. And so, yeah, but yeah, let me just grab this link and stick it right there. The TypeScript cheat sheet for React is phenomenal. Yeah, as far as like tips and stuff, yeah, like most tools make it so that once you configure TypeScript, it just kind of works. Yeah. Oh, I guess another good tip is don't expect yourself to be a master of types as soon as you get started. Because what has happened to me when I got started with types, I would started with Flow, but same thing. I spent so much time trying to make my types perfect, and I sunk just a ton of time into it, where I would have been better off typing it as any, or now we have unknown, which is better, and doing typecasts all over the place and different stuff like that. I would have been way better off just going with that, and then coming back later when I was better at TypeScript to make it really good. So yeah, don't feel like you have to be an expert typer when you get started with TypeScript. Otherwise, you won't get as much done, and it will be frustrating. And then at the end of it, you may end up doing some weird things with your types and with your code to make things work, and then you'll come back and you'll just be in a mess. So just like write your regular JavaScript, go ahead and cast things and do whatever you need to make things work, then come back later and fix it later. Especially when we're talking about like within a function, you're like mutating an object or something like that. Feel free to cast inside of there. Try to make the boundaries more type safe and do less weird things around the boundaries. But within individual functions, feel free to do all of the things that they tell you not to do until you're better at TypeScript. So yeah, sweet. Thanks for sharing that resource. We've purchased testing JavaScript. Yay. Will include TypeScript in the future. Yes. Testing JavaScript and Epic React will both 100% be TypeScript in the future. That is on my very long list of things to do, but it's going to take a long time, because the way that I do things, I don't just like say, okay, I'm going to take this month and I'm going to make this course or whatever. I need to really understand what I'm going to teach you. And so it takes me a long time to do that. I've been using TypeScript for 3 years, for almost 4, but still, I haven't been using it in the capacity that I need to be able to do this. And then of course, I also like need to actually make the updates, which takes a very long time. So I can't promise that this will even happen this year. At the beginning of the year, I thought it would, but now I'm questioning whether I'll get this done this year. But it is something that I'm planning on doing. And if it's any comfort to you, I have turned down opportunities to work at companies or work with people because I want to get this done first. So I am pretty dedicated to this. Again, it's a plan, not a promise. Those are different things. But I definitely plan on updating both testing JavaScript and Epic React to be 100% TypeScript. Talking about TypeScript, hi, Matthias. What can you do to avoid use of any in a project that uses strict TypeScript? Yeah, is a situation. Yeah, I agree with Darius here. Can't be answered broadly. Yeah, well, so I don't use any very often. I pretty much use unknown most of the time. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I really haven't used any. Yeah, I've actually never used explicitly said this is any. I will sometimes have an implicit any, which I catch with the linting rule. So I don't, yeah, I don't know. As far as like tips, I will cast things sometimes if I have to. Yes, teammates strongly want to use any because it feels TypeScript is blocking their work. Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah. Darius, you know what you're talking about. I agree with Darius again. It's a question of mindset, and I think also it has a lot to do with experience too. So like especially if you're feeling that TypeScript is blocking your work, it's because you are, well, it's two things. You don't have enough experience with TypeScript to be able to solve your problem. And that can be totally frustrating. So yeah, what I typically do is I'll use a typecast. I'll just say as whatever type I want it to be, and then I'll move on with my work. And I like to avoid those. I don't do those very often. And the more experience I gain, the less often I have to do that. Yeah, that's what I would suggest is rather than typing something as any, type it as what you want it to be, and then use casting if you need to. I guess in yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. Didn't mention whether you need. Oh, sorry. Did they ask about that? Yeah. So whether you need to pay for the upgrade. So to be clear, what you have now is what you paid for. And so anything else that you get is just a nice present that I'm giving you, because we do not guarantee that you're going to get free updates. That's never been part of the plan, or part of the what you purchased. You did not purchase free upgrades. However, we have done free upgrades in the past. So with testingjavascript.com, I did an update for 2020, and that was a free update for existing license holders. I don't make all the pricing decisions because I work in tandem with Egghead, and they take a slice of the pie, and so they have something to say about the pricing. And in fact, I kind of hand off all pricing decisions to them, and I just give feedback and input. So yeah, I'm not sure whether we will charge extra. It will be an enormous effort, and so I think that it would be. I may charge extra as like an upgrade or something like that, but I'm not sure. It could be a free thing. Just kind of depends on what we all decide. So I can't really say either way. What do I think about this book? I've never read it, so I can't say anything. I don't read books. I'm a terrible book reader. I listen to books. And coding books, unfortunately, are hard to listen to if they have like coding blocks and stuff. So yeah, I can't give you feedback on that, but maybe you will find feedback on that in, I don't think that would really apply in the entertainment section. So probably just in the general, you could ask about what people think about it if they've read it. Yeah, cool. Brendan is asking about forms in React. Want to make them dry, reusable. The problem is each form has a different action buttons. Okay, this, as I'm reading this, I'm thinking I may need like a code example because it's hard to give you general advice on stuff like this. But just making the form fields reusable component and then wrapping. Yeah, okay. So in general, this is what I suggest is programming. So in here, I talk about avoid hasty abstractions, and I reference how to get out of the wrong abstraction. So if you go to Sandy Mitt's article about the wrong abstraction, down here, Sandy talks about if you find yourself in a situation where you have a lot of code that is like really weirdly abstracted, then the fastest way to get out of that bad abstraction is to reintroduce duplication by inlining the abstract code back into every color. And then within each color, use the parameters being passed to determine the subset of inline code needed for the specific color to execute, and delete the bits that aren't needed. And once you've done that, then you're able to see, oh, here are the parts that are actually shared, and I abstract those things. So there may be like smaller pieces, or you may realize that there actually isn't anything useful to share between these. And if that's the case, then great. You have a little bit of duplication, no big deal. So that's what I would suggest is duplicate first, and then you can identify the things that are shared if there's anything and abstract those. But yeah, don't be afraid of duplication just by virtue of duplication, especially with declarative code. If it's just like I'm rendering a bunch of components and stuff, then it's probably fine to have a little bit of duplication. I appreciate do not repeat yourself just as much as anybody else, but you have to remember that the only thing that we can know for certain is that anything we need to maintain is going to be changed. If it never needs to change, then it's not needed. We don't need to maintain it. So if you're going to maintain it, then it needs to change. You need to optimize for that change. And you do that by avoiding hasty abstractions. So good luck, Brendan. Okay, Idris is asking, can you elaborate on reasons why you want to switch from Firebase authentication to my own implementation? Yeah, the reason is that I want to have my database distributed all over the world. But I lose all the benefits of a distributed database if I have centralized authentication, and Firebase is centralized. And so even if I have a database right next to you over in Asia, then I'm still going to have to come all the way around the world to talk to authentication server with Firebase, and then go all the way back anytime you make a request, because I need to have your user info. So that's the reason, is so that I can have a distributed database and all authentication happens right there where it's distributed at. So it's super fast. That's the hope. I want it to be fast everywhere. And then on top of that, if you don't need the extra complexities of distributed database, you can still just deploy that one thing in one place and it all still works fine. So it works both ways. That's the reason. Any thought about route params versus query string? The page depends on a date value that can be passed. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you know, I'm not sure, Matthias. I think if there's something like, if I'm on the page and I'm typing in a search query, then query string makes sense. Like it's in the name. Yeah, that makes sense to me. If I'm like, if what I'm doing is navigating to a different page, or some part of my page changes as I'm interacting with things or whatever, then a route parameter seems to make sense in that case. So yeah, for your specific situation, yeah, this one I would probably do a route param. I think. Yeah, that seems, and defaulting to today, that, yeah, some date slash date slash probably nothing. Yeah, I guess would default to today. And then if you choose a different day, then it shows the date. Yeah, I think that URLs without a query string look cleaner personally as a user. And so I try to avoid query strings unless it's just like the obvious choice with like when I have a search and I'm filtering or something that is like, yeah, definitely needs to be a query string. And the other thing is, if you think about things where you have multiple parameters and the order doesn't matter, doesn't make any more sense. So if you have a filter and a sort, do you do the filter first or the sort first? That doesn't really make sense why you do one first or the other. So that is another clear indication that a query string would make more sense. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up and I go take a quick break before working on authentication? Cool. All right, sweet. This was fun. I need to, might be good for office hours. Let me take a look. Ooh, I missed this. Okay. Hi there, Jay. I'm looking at this in office hours right now. Check. Yeah, and I need to, I'll pin the message where I sent the YouTube thing. Pin, there we go. Okay. Oh, and I just got a chat in Zoom. Yeah, try to avoid sending chats to Zoom. Send them here if you can.
Sorry, just
that's okay.
Send you a couple of links about accessibility. So if you didn't know that sites, so there are a lot of information about accessibility. So,
oh, cool.
yes.
So you
No.
Did you have a specific question about it, or you were just sharing it because you'd like to share stuff?
Just sharing, because you said that there is not enough like
oh yeah,
accessibility. Yeah. So
cool. I'll put it in Discord here too.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a lot of useful stuff. Cool. Okay, so let's answer this question here really quick. From Jay. Super awesome. Thanks. That's nice. A few questions though. I was considering a for form execution example. Let's say 300 fields on the form. Holy moly! I hope nobody's building a form with 300 fields. That's a UX problem. But yeah, if you have that, considering that these will have controlled components, let's say 50 fields, need some client-side validations to be done on page load. Consider that these dynamic input get auto-populated. In this scenario, which approach would you suggest, to go the controlled component or with an controlled component approach? So here's the thing. If you don't need to change the value programmatically, you don't need to control it. And that is the entire rule. You don't need to control an input if you don't need to change it programmatically. If you need to initialize it, then we use a default value prop, and you can pass the default value. So that's the auto-populated thing. So a situation where you need to control it is if I check this field to say, billing address is similar to shipping address, then I could click that and it would autofill all of those things. And that would be a situation where controlled might be useful. However, you could also still be uncontrolled and you just use the key prop. And when that value change, when they check that box, it actually unmounts all of the old stuff and mounts a new one with the default values. So you could still do uncontrolled for something like that. But all of that said, controlled isn't necessarily a performance issue. It's just like extra code that you may not need is all that matters there. So that the controlled and uncontrolled thing, I need to write a blog post about this because I don't have one yet. But it's not super important. It's just like extra work that I find a lot of people doing that I'm like, why you don't need to do this. So yeah, you can go either way on that. Another option is put context ready to do. Do you think we can take the same approach for all fields? Yeah, so you could totally just put everything in a context provider. The biggest challenge is the more consumers you have of a context provider, like each one of those consumers is going to re-render when the value changes. And so if we took our slow form example from that demo, and we just re-implemented it to put everything in a context provider, we'll have no difference. So yeah, like the only reason I bring up that other option is if you just have like two fields that need to know about one another's value, like a password and confirmed password or something, then you can use a context provider so that only those two re-render when there's a value change in one or the other. And then the rest of the fields don't need to re-render. But if you ended up putting all of your form field values into that context provider, then you're still going to get every component re-rendering. And so it's no better than just hoisting it up. So there'd be no reason to put it in context. So the only reason you'd use context is to avoid unnecessary re-renders of components that don't care about those values. But if every component cares about the values, then you're no better. And then you go back to the other option of memoizing everything, which is an option, and it's nice that React gives us that option, but it's nice to avoid it. And actually, somebody on Twitter built an example of this, as well as the DOM doing this third option, and I'm going to put that example in the blog post because it's actually not all that much. It's kind of fun. Where we would like to consider either the React hook form or Formic, but looking at uncontrolled versus controlled approach. Controlled seems closer to what we achieve. What do you think about these libraries? All I can tell you is that I've heard people complain about performance with Formic, and I've heard people praise React hook form for its great performance. And that's all I can say. I can't, because I technically do use Formic on my website, but I didn't build that part. Somebody else did for me. And I've never used React hook form. So yeah, most of my forms experience came from AngularJS days, like big forms. Now, anything that I've done with React was like 2 or 3 fields. I've never done big forms with React. But I have consulted people on big forms with React, and I tell them co-locate your state, and they say, wow, that fixed it. So yeah, but I can't speak to specific libraries because I've never used a library for forms. Yeah, and I will show, somebody did build that third option, so I'll add a link to that. It's pretty cool. And actually, if you look at my tweet about this and look through the threads, you'll find it. Thank you. I'm glad that you liked the videos. Yeah, okay, sweet. And I'm guessing maybe they posted there. Nope, here. No need. Just answered. Check the YouTube recording. Okay, cool. Yeah, and looks like Renee has used React hook form and enjoyed it, so that's good. Okay, I think that's it. That was fun. Both have their issues with complex forms and dynamically adding and removing fields, field arrays. Yeah, and it's hard to find something without trade-offs at the end of the day. So yeah, that was fun. Thanks everybody. I'll wait for these people to finish typing. And then I'm going to take a little break, and then I'll come back in like maybe a half hour or so and start working on implementing authentication on my own with Postgres and Prisma. It's going to be fun. It'll be interesting. I need to update the site to say that it is not on Saturdays, but on Fridays, because we are going to go for Fridays in the future. Hopefully that works fine for you. And I'll need to update the calendar event too. Bummer. I don't know if anybody uses that. Maybe I'll just remove it. You can put it in the calendar yourself. But yeah, let's see. Can we use Memo instead of use Callback? Yes, you can. So use callback is just a simpler version of use memo, but I haven't tried this, but I'm pretty sure this is all it would be. Memo, it would be this. And then deps is basically the same as use callback minus one of those functions. Pretty sure that's, you might not get the same linting issues or things, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that's basically what use memo is, or what use callback is. So, okay, as people are still typing, we've got 6 minutes left, so I'm happy to hang out for a little bit longer. Let's see, I think Jay was talking about something. Cool, good stuff. Hi, Jay, in case you're watching this later.
Question, if
yeah, sure.
Can I? So I heard that you came from Angular world, right?
Yes.
And so I did the same, and I mean to React. So and it seems that the Angular team tries to push the developers to follow some architect patterns to build the apps, the web apps. But at the same time, it seems that React doesn't do that at all. And there's a lot of people around in the React community who said that, like, do that, do this, like write the application like they want, or how they think that it works. Do you think it's an advantage or disadvantage of React library in general, that like React team doesn't say you anything how to build the apps? Even the folder structure, they said like don't waste like more than 5 minutes on that. Just write the code and let's see how it works. Like,
yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. So personally, I think that's an advantage. I really like that about React, that they're not prescriptive about how you build your apps, because I think it leads to innovation throughout the community. It does lead to some confusion for beginners, where they're like, I'm not sure, I don't have enough context to make this decision. That's exactly what I'm feeling with the database situation that as I started this video with, or this live stream with. So yeah, there's that downside, but the benefit is there's just a huge amount of innovation going on throughout the React ecosystem because they're not prescriptive. Vue is the same way. They're pretty prescriptive about the way that you do apps. They have official libraries for different things like animations and routing and stuff like that. And there are de facto official libraries for that in React. Like there's React Router, there's React Testing Library. React Query has kind of become a de facto standard for server cache management and stuff. But yeah, I don't think that those solutions would exist if the React team just said, we're going to do it all. We're going to do it for you. So yeah, there are definitely trade-offs. I'm not saying that React is just 100% better, obviously, or anything. But I am happier with the way that React does things. So yeah, it works.
Thank you.
And the other part of it is there's not a silver bullet for anything, right? And so when a framework takes a stance on the way that you should do something, they have to choose the thing that works for 80% of the cases, or the most cases that they can. And what that means is it might be more complex for simple applications and not complex enough for really complex applications. And so what that means is, because it's blessed by the framework, you're just naturally going to go with that approach. And so it may be more complex for you than you need it to be, or you may have to try and retrofit their solution with with your problem. And in the React world, if you try to go with something like Next.js or Remix, and it doesn't work with what you're trying to accomplish, then you just move on to some other innovation that the community has come up with, rather than trying to retrofit your problem into their solution, because it's not an official blessed thing, and so you feel more comfortable switching to something else. And the fact is that React is twice as big as the next biggest thing, and so it's there's just so many people using it that there are a lot of solutions there too. So
thank you. It's a great answer. Thank you.
That's my very biased opinion on the whole matter. So okay, let me see if I can answer these last couple things. So we've got a question about, let's see, better way to handle this. So pretty open-ended question. So whenever I see a use effect and a fetch, my natural response is, yes, there's a better way to handle this. Use React Query. I would not recommend using use effect and fetch by yourself. Just use React Query. It will simplify things drastically. And it looks like this is a paid pagination sort of thing. And React Query has, I've never used a pagination, but React Query has support for pagination, I know. So when sort changes, page is not one, fetch will be called twice with the previous page state and the new page state. How can we prevent this behavior? Okay, so let me think. When sort changes and page is not one. I'm not sure I understand. So if I change the sort, then we're going to fetch and page is not one. How could page not be one? So unless I'm missing something, it sounds like I'm not sure I understand. Oh, wait. Here we go. Oh, I see. Okay, here's what's happening is you can you change the sort, and so then we call this fetch. But then you also, when you change the sort, you want to set the page to 1. So if I'm on page 6 and I change the sort, then you want me to go back to page 1. I think that's what you're talking about. Okay, that makes sense. So how would you prevent it from making 2 requests? Yeah, I'll have to call that friend back. Yeah, so the way that you would do this is, let me think. So you could use a ref to change the value of the page, or yeah, it sounds like the what you want to do is actually combine these as a reducer. That's what I would do. So rather than storing these 2 separately, I would store them in a single reducer, and then whatever triggers the sort to be changed would actually just dispatch in an action that would say change the sort, and that would also change the page. So it all change at the same time. That's what I would do. Put it in a reducer. Good luck. Okay, 10 p.m. in India. Sorted out Friday night learning. Woohoo! I'm glad that Friday is going to work for you. When making a form in React, if you're not using validation, would it be better to pull your fields in state or give the form data ref create? Yeah, actually, you know what? This is probably what I should do in my blog posts that I did. So here's what I should probably update my example. So in the blog post that I just made, what I do here is I look through all of the form values or form elements, and for all the input elements, I set the field values, but I probably could just do what you're doing there. I don't know why I didn't think about this, because this is what we do in Remix a lot, is create a new form data out of the form. and then I can get all the values out of that. And I'm pretty sure there's probably a way to just say, turn this form data into an object, which is what I'm effectively trying to do with this stuff here. So maybe that'd be something to look into. But anyway, yeah, so the question has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, yeah, if whether you're using validation or not. Yeah, this is like super related to my post here. So if you haven't read this yet, totally give that a read. Yeah, if you're not using validation at all, then that's awesome, or it makes it really easy, because this solution is great. It works perfect. If you are using validation, then remember, you don't necessarily need to control the value, so you could just delete that. All you need is to know what the value is. You don't have to set the value programmatically. I mean, it doesn't make a difference either way. Dan Abramoff would say, why don't you just put the prop there? Like, it's no big deal. It doesn't make a difference. And he's right. It's true. I need to write a blog post about this to talk about the nuance. But yeah, so if you are doing validation, then you absolutely need to know when the value is changing. And then if you have performance problems, then take a look at this blog post. I'm not sure what else the question is. Yeah, and it prevents a re-render on input change. It's pretty unusual to have a form where there's no validation, but if you can get away with it, then that's great. Yep, and Yago had the same idea, and very good. Yep. Yep, all these people answering the question better than I did. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking from entries. Nice, cool. Yeah, that was fun. Thanks, folks. I'm going to update this blog post really quick to do that. And somebody did give me a link to provide here. And in addition, they also gave me an implementation of the context approach. So I'm going to put that there. So you can take a look at that update here in a little bit. And then I'll come back and we'll do authentication. It's going to be fun. So thanks for hanging out. It's always fun to do office hours. We'll see you next week.